The history of Rotary is not a story of a man with a new idea, for Rotary's concept of fellowship is as old as civilization. But Rotary's story is that of a man who perceived fellowship in its broadest scope and who took action to bring his particular vision of that concept to reality. Paul Harris, the man whose vision and action have changed the world. Much has been written about the beginnings of Rotary, how as a young professional in the big city of Chicago, Paul Harris sought to recreate the friendliness that exemplified his small hometown. But while that motivated bringing the idea to life, Rotary still would not have grown and flourished had not Paul Harris's vision encompassed a much broader perspective, and had not his personal dedication and action transformed that vision into the reality of humanitarian service on a global scale.
Rotarians and other folks as well sometimes think that Rotary developed of its own accord and without effort on the part of anyone. No, Rotary has not grown by virtue of the fact that a suitable formula had been devised. It has become worldwide in its influence because of the untiring effort to extend it.
Early in the history of Rotary, there were those who felt that it would not be possible nor worthwhile to organize Rotary clubs in any city other than Chicago. It was then that Rotary was coming to mean something to Paul Harris that was very different from what it meant to many of the early Rotarians. He began to envision Rotary as a global fellowship whose aim was service to others.
As a matter of fact, my conception of Rotary was undergoing evolutionary processes, almost revolutionary at times. In this dilemma, it seemed easier to organize new clubs with new and progressive thoughts than to reconvert old members. So, I proceeded to address myself to the task of getting Rotary clubs started in cities throughout the United States.
Paul's natural approach to the task of expanding Rotary was to rely upon his personal acquaintance with enthusiastic individuals. He would inspire them with the idea of Rotary and its immense potential for service. Then he sent them back to their home cities to initiate their own clubs. The progress at first was very slow.
To find the right man to organize a Rotary club in a given city was not easy. 3 long years passed before the first victory was scored. It was a long and frequently a painful grind. There were headaches and heartaches in plenty, but there were also periods of joy and elation.
Once the idea of Rotary took root, it began to grow at a surprising pace. Rotary clubs began coming into existence everywhere in North America.
Hundreds of small cities and towns, all but dead so far as civic consciousness was concerned, took on new life after they organized their Rotary clubs. Our success in the United States inspired us to project Rotary over the boundary line into Canada. After 2 unsuccessful attempts, the right man eventually was interested, and the first club outside the United States was organized in Winnipeg, Canada. Flushed with success, we then felt that it was of vital importance to get things started in Great Britain. And of course, London was the choice of all cities. To win London to the movement was a grand objective, and in course of time, the opportunity opened up.
And so it went, from Great Britain to Ireland to Latin America to Europe to Australia and New Zealand and to the near and far East.
Rotary clubs came into existence by the hundreds and the thousands. Professional organizers were unnecessary. Every club had the impulse to pass on to other cities the idea which it had found so beneficial in its city. Rotary expanded from a local group, gathered together in the city of Chicago for mutual advantage and fellowship, to an organization of international vision and unquestionable nobility of purpose.
In later years, Rotarians from many places would come to Chicago to personally meet the founder of Rotary. Ches Perry, Rotary's first secretary and Paul's longtime friend, once said, "I suppose that Rotarians come to see you, Paul, in about the same spirit they go to visit the source of a great river." Paul gratefully accepted the honor, but typical of the man, he suggested that his part had perhaps been overemphasized.
Does the great river have its flow from any one particular spring alone? No. The great river is the sum total of the contributions of hundreds, perhaps thousands of little brooks and rivulets. Well, that is like the growth of Rotary. It has become great because of the self-sacrificing contributions of thousands of Rotarians of many lands.
Yes, Rotary has grown great due to the dedication of Paul Harris and thousands of Rotarians. But what has thus far been created is just a foundation. Every Rotarian and every Rotary Club must build upon that foundation, adding to the contributions of those who have come before. We build a strong future by remembering that we are heirs to the legacy of Paul Harris's vision and action, and rededicating ourselves to act in the spirit of service above self.